All right, so like I said yesterday, we weren't going to have a reaction to last night's Pitt North Carolina game because that thing was just way too late. 9 o'clock game, didn't get home until very late, and so too late to record a morning Pitt. I mean, this is not a Pitt Syracuse Thursday night football game where we come home and do a live show afterward or anything like that. We'll talk about Pitt North Carolina tomorrow. We'll talk about Pitt North Carolina tonight on the live Panther-Lair show. That's at 8:30 right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Jim Hammett and I will get together for an hour of Pitt sports talk with you, and certainly the Pitt Carolina game will be at the top of our conversation topic list. We'll see if it's a good one or a bad one. You're listening to this on Wednesday morning. You already know what happened in that game. Obviously, we were recording this before the game happened. But a little bit too late last night. So we'll find some other topics here to talk about. We'll get into the Pitt-Carolina game tonight and talk more basketball on tomorrow's morning Pitt. But for now, there was something that happened Monday night after we recorded yesterday's morning Pitt. It was the football schedule release, the 2025 football schedule release. And we always laugh about, how much can you really talk about a football schedule? Well, there's a few things to discuss with Pitt's 2025 football schedule. There's things like bye weeks and Thursday night games, of which Pitt has none. How the opponents sort of lay out, home, road, back and forth, and what it looks like, how the schedule looks, and how the season will play out. And I also think that when you get the full schedule release, when you find out what that schedule looks like, and you get all the dates, you start letting your mind wander a little bit to, how are they going to do? This is the schedule. These are the games they're going to play. This is the order they're going to play them in, the dates they're going to face off. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think will be the outcome? And so I think there's a little bit to talk about there because, this Pitt football team, as they continue trying to build through the transfer portal, we've already seen one addition this week. We know there are efforts to make another addition. I don't know if those efforts will be successful or not, but the efforts are being made. It gets you to start thinking about what this team might be, what they might be able to do, and kind of success they might have in the fall. So 2025 football schedule is out. Let's talk about the schedule. Let's talk about how it looks for Pitt, and let's talk about what it might mean for how the Panthers will do in 2025. We're talking a little football here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, the football schedule came out on Monday night. First of all, ACC, why do you have to drag this out, man? I know it's not a unique complaint. I know I'm not the first person to say it, and I know this is like a vast majority shared opinion. There are very few people who think that who disagree about the unnecessary nature of the ACC schedule release show. The fact that it really doesn't need to take as long as it does. It doesn't need to be dragged out over 3 days, and they've announced one game on Friday and the rest of the schedule on Monday, or one game on Thursday, one game on Friday, or all this, and it was like a 2-hour show on Monday night. You don't need that. You're announcing dates. The time was they just did it over email, and just tweeted it out. You don't need a 2-hour television show to announce these things. And to be honest, here's the other thing. I don't know how many people are tuning in and hanging on every word to find out when their team plays Boston College. It's not like the NCAA tournament reveal where, what seed is my team going to get? Are they in? Are they in number one? Whatever it might be. These are just the dates of games. And they help you with your travel plans, but you could wait till the end and find out, and it doesn't really have much of a difference. You could just wait and check in the morning on Tuesday morning and be like, oh, look at that. Pitt's playing Florida State on this date, or Pitt's going to Syracuse on this date. And that's about the same as if you checked it out on Monday night. It's just, it's a waste of time. And I can't say it wasted a lot of my time. I didn't watch the show on Monday night. No disrespect to our friends at the ACC network. They do a great job there. But, not a lot of need for the show to be dragged out as long as it is. Now, that said, I think there is analyses you can do on a schedule release. I think you can look at a schedule and you talk about what are some of the biggest games and talk about what are the biggest stretches for each team, and what are you really looking forward to? What looks good? What looks bad? What stands out? And obviously, that's what we're going to do here for 20 minutes on the Morning Pit is talk about the schedule. So I'm not saying you can't talk about a schedule. You just don't need to drag it out like it's some high drama. In the end, everybody's going to have 12 games announced. Everybody knows it. You could just go with it. Put all the schedules out there and talk about it. You could go team by team. You could release them all online at once and then talk about it team by team on your TV show and probably make people just as happy, if not more so. As it relates to Pitt, though, Panthers, a handful of these games we already knew on the schedule. The first three games of the season: Duquesne at home, at Acrisure Stadium, Central Michigan at home, and then West Virginia on the road. Those three were in the books. Those three were already locked in. Well before Monday, well before last Friday or whatever it was when they first started announcing things, we knew those three games were going to happen. We knew there would be a Notre Dame game somewhere in there as well. And then we knew the opponents from the ACC of who Pitt would face, at home and on the road. We knew all those, we knew that, had it in front of me here. 2025. There we go. We knew that Boston College, Louisville, NC State, and Miami were coming to Pittsburgh. We knew that Pitt was going to Florida State, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Stanford. So, we knew all of that. It was just a matter of locking in those dates, finding out when the Notre Dame game was going to be. I think that's always chief among, everyone's interests. And then finding out when they would be on the road, at home, what games might line up as homecoming, and when the off weeks would happen. All of those things are, those are the things you're looking for out of the schedule release. And to that end, we found out that Pitt will have an off week after those first three games. And this is one of the first things that stood out to me. Not the number one thing that stood out, but one of the first things that stood out to me when I looked at Pitt's schedule for 2025. Because I always think the breakdown of when those bye weeks happen, when those off weeks come, I always think that's interesting to look at because it's going to give you a sense of the kind of the rhythm of the season. And, Pitt we've seen have, I think a couple years now, they've had, 4 games in September and then an off week. We've seen that happen. I feel like that might have been the case last year. I forget if that's exactly how it worked out. Or you might get your off week really early in the season and then not again. Or, maybe you'll have a big stretch run of 4 games, 5 games in a row, 5 weeks in a row to end the season. This year, I think what's unique about Pitt's schedule is it's this nice sort of balance where they play 3 games and then they have an off week in the final weekend of September, and then they dive into. Well, it's not the final weekend of September. I should say the third weekend of September. September 20th, they're off. And then on September 27th, they start ACC play. They have Louisville, and then they have Boston College, both at home. They go to Florida State. They go to Syracuse. They have NC State at home. And then they go to Stanford. So they get those 6 in a row. They get an off week on November 8th. No game on November 8th. And then they finish up with Notre Dame at home, at Georgia Tech, Miami at home. So you have this 3-6-3 breakdown that I think the coaches probably like. I think it's pretty good. It seems good to me. Like you get these first 3 non-conference games, Duquesne, Central Michigan, West Virginia. And then you get to the third week of September and you get an off week to sort of take stock of where you're at. You're going to have there's a natural sort of separation point there of diving into ACC play after that West Virginia game. And you get a week to kind of recalibrate and figure out where you are and what you're doing and what's going well, what's not, what kind of changes do you need to make, and some of those you're going to make on a week-to-week basis anyway. But you get that off week that creates a natural little break, a natural separation between non-conference and conference play, and then you play 6 games in a row, 6 weeks in a row, and then you have off that second Saturday in November. Rest up as much as you can, heal as many wounds as you can, try to give guys a break, and then settle in for the stretch run of the final 3 games. Big games for sure. Notre Dame and Miami at home, sandwiched around a trip to Georgia Tech for the road finale at Georgia Tech the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Miami closing out the regular season at home the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I think that's a good setup, that 3-6-3. 3 games break, 6 games break, 3 games break. I don't know if there's an ideal way to do that. I don't know, Pat Narduzzi would just say, well, we just play the schedule, play the games, whatever we can play, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's a pretty good setup. I think that's a good way to break the schedule up. And I mentioned that they close with Miami at home. This is actually only the 5th time since Pat Narduzzi's been at Pitt that he has had that Pitt has closed the regular season at home. They actually closed the regular season at home in Narduzzi's first 3 years. They had Miami in 2015, Syracuse in 2016, and then Miami again in 2017. So 3 years in a row, their regular season finale was a home game. 2018, they went to Miami for the regular season finale. And then in 19, they closed the regular season against Boston College. And since then, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24, the last 5 seasons, they have been on the road for the regular season finale. Now, does it matter? I don't know. I mean, they won the regular season finale on the road in 2020. I think they won at Georgia Tech. 21, they won at Syracuse. 22, they won at Miami. And then 23 and 24, they lost. So they're 3-2 in those road regular season finales over the last 5 years. As far as those 4 games at home, they lost to Boston. They lost to Boston College in 2019, lost to Miami in 2015, and then won the 2 games in between. Syracuse and Miami in 16 and 17, respectively, were both Pitt victories. But I think it's interesting that they're closing the regular season at home. I think that's nice. You don't always get to do that. I mean, this past year they had 2 road games to end the regular season. So senior day was the Clemson game, second week in November or something like that, when you still have a couple of games left to play. I like the sense of finality that comes with, playing your regular season finale at home. So Pitt will have that against Miami this year. Another thing that stands out to me about the schedule, not including the lack of a Thursday night game, which seems like it's been forever since we've gone through a season where Pitt didn't have a weeknight game, didn't have a Thursday night game. They're all Saturday games this year, which, I, for one, I'm all about that. Thursday nights are fun. They're exciting, but they're a whole lot more fun if I can just sit here on my couch and watch somebody play as opposed to going to a Pitt game and covering it and, going really late like we do. I know you guys always show up as troopers during the post-game shows that we do at 2 in the morning on a Thursday night into Friday morning, but I'd much rather do those on Saturdays. It's just better for the body and, circadian rhythms and all those things to just do that on Saturday after the game. And so I like not having a Thursday night game. I think you probably do too. Pitt doesn't typically draw well for Thursday night games. It's never really been a big boost for attendance to have those games. And, I'm more than happy to stick to the Saturdays. There's an interesting sort of pattern of home and away games on this schedule. Obviously, the Duquesne and Central Michigan games are at home, but then they go to West Virginia for that game in the series, the 4th one of this stretch of the series, of the 4-game series. And then they come back home for a pair of games, Louisville and Boston College, and then they go on the road, Florida State and Syracuse, and then they go back and forth. NC State at home, Stanford on the road, Notre Dame at home, Georgia Tech on the road, Miami at home. I think that's good. I think it's good to have that kind of bouncing back and forth between home and road. Ideally you'd play as many home games in a row as you can, but you're going to have to pay that off at the other end. If you have too many home games, too many consecutive home games, you're going to end up having to go on the road for more than you would like. I think being able to bounce like that is a good thing. Going back and forth as opposed to, 3 home games in a row and then 3 or 4 road games in a row. I don't think you want to travel that much on consecutive weekends. They're home after the trip to Stanford. That game is November 1st when they go out to Stanford. And, the next week, actually they're off the following week. So they're home the week before the trip to Stanford. They're off the week after the trip to Stanford. So if that extra long travel and time change has any sort of negative impact, you get a little bit of extra time to sleep it off, so to speak. Those are the things that really sort of stood out to me schedule-wise. It's funny, as we start talking about, how should they do against this schedule? I look at it wow, where's the tough stretch? Where's that stretch in the schedule that just really, that's going to be a tough one to get through that. And I really have no idea at all. What's Louisville going to be? What's their quarterback situation? What's West Virginia going to be with Rich Rodriguez back? Boston College. I guess they played against the other quarterback last year and they lost. Pitt lost to him. But that game's at home. You'd like to think Pitt will do better. Pat Narduzzi is 1-3 against Boston College. Pitt, I think, only has 2 wins against Boston College since joining the ACC. I think Pitt is 2-3. Narduzzi is 1-3. They lost the 2019 game, which was a complete disaster and a debacle. They lost the 2020 game, which was the one where Kenny Pickett broke his ankle and they missed an extra point in overtime and lost it by 1 point. They won in 2023, that game that broke the losing streak, Nate Yarnell's crowning achievement, and then of course they lost last year. Boston College is not a team you should be 1-3 against, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to Boston College. I don't mean to how could you be 1-3 against Boston College? But really, I would think Pitt is or should be a better program and a better positioned football program than Boston College. And so you should not have a losing record against them, and particularly not a 1-3 record against Boston College. But here we are. And it's interesting when you think about those three losses that Narduzzi has suffered under against Boston College. One was, I think, what they lose in 2019. It was like 26-19 or something like that. Just a miserable a miserable offensive performance. 2024 obviously was another miserable offensive performance. Yeah, I think you find usually when Pitt has lost a bunch of games to the same teams, it probably comes down to the offense. It's just sort of seems to be the pattern there. Another team that I think Narduzzi has a losing record against, but should be better than he is NC State. Pitt's only played NC State twice since joining the ACC, both under Pat Narduzzi, once in 2017 when the Panthers went 5-7. That was just a rough year overall. And then again in 2020, the COVID year, 30-29 game. I think Taysier Mack dropped a 2-point conversion. I forget. Memories of that year are very hazy in general. I think everybody is sort of in a fog from what that year was. But that was a game that was played that year. And I want to say, was that their first? I think that might have been their first loss. They started off 3-0 and then lost that game and lost the Boston College game and lost to Miami and lost to Notre Dame. And it felt like the wheels were completely falling off before they went to Tallahassee and beat up on Florida State. They will return to Tallahassee and Doak Campbell Stadium this season, October 11th. They'll return to Tallahassee. Pitt actually leads the all-time series against Florida State 6-5, which is interesting. And they won the game down there under Narduzzi. And this game in 2023 ended up being a 24-7 win for Florida State. But Pitt was right there. And quite frankly, if Konate Mumfield's helmet, doesn't get turned around to the back of his head as he's about to score a touchdown, who knows how that game ends up going? Could have been very different. Now, Florida State apparently hitching their wagons to Thomas Castellanos. I don't know, man. I sort of feel the same way I felt about Florida State getting DJU last year of like, really? Is this the guy? Is this really who you want? But yep, that's who they're choosing. Pitt will actually play at Florida State the week after they host Boston College. So a little bit of a lining up there. But it's tough when you look through the schedule of like, well, who's going to be good, who's not, who impressed last season, who retained their guys. Notre Dame is going to come here with Fernando Mendoza, right? Isn't he going to Notre Dame? Am I making that up? I just want to make sure that's accurate. No, he went to Indiana. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I don't know who Notre Dame's quarterback is going to be. Kenny Minchie or Steve Angeli or somebody like that. I forget, I haven't seen if Notre Dame got a transfer quarterback, but you probably will assume that they will. But so many teams like I don't know what to expect out of Boston College. I don't know what to expect out of Miami. I don't know what to expect out of most of these teams. Generally speaking, I think there's some challenging games on this schedule. I think you're going to West Virginia. That's going to be a challenge no matter what. I think Louisville has shown that they're a good team and a good program under Jeff Brom, and they're going to be a real challenge. Boston College should be a game you win, but again, Narduzzi's 1-3 against the Eagles. Florida State on the road, they're coming off a 2-win season, but maybe the Deuce Span, revenge game plays here. At Syracuse, I mean, should be a game Pitt wins, but it's, Narduzzi's lost to Syracuse a couple times. NC State is one of those programs that, I would think Pitt should be at least equivalent to or better than, but they've been a challenge. That would be a big win for Pitt to pull off. At Stanford, I mean, who knows what that'll be like going on the road, going across the country to play like that. Notre Dame is always going to be tough. At Georgia Tech, I tend to think that Georgia Tech is, not a better program than Pitt, but they went 7-6 last year, just like Pitt did. And Brent Key's first game as a head coach of the Yellow Jackets was a win over Pitt that ultimately, contributed to the Panthers not making the ACC championship game that season. One of the worst losses that Narduzzi has taken, I think. It really is. And then the Miami game. Miami. I think if you're gonna play Miami, you want them in the finale. You know what I mean? You want them at the end of the season where there's a decent chance they pull to Miami and just quit. Because then you can get a win. 2014, 2022, like some of the wins that Pitt has over Miami, they largely quit. Not 2017. That team was still undefeated. They were number 2 in the country. They had not quit. But, you got a decent chance when you're playing Miami that they might have just totally cashed in by the time they get to game 12. And I think you would hope for that outcome. Although the far more exciting outcome will be if Pitt and Miami were both very good and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what Pitt's going to do against this schedule. I can make a prediction of 8-4 or something like that, and it's probably a safe bet to go with 8-4. That's sort of right in the middle of what Pitt does or should be. On most years, I think if you pick 8-4, you've got a decent chance of being right, or at least within one game. Everything seems like it'll end up in that range of 7-9 wins, and so you would pick like 8-4. But until we have a real sense of who these teams are and how they're going to be, it's hard to sit here and say, well, you pencil in win here or loss there. I guess maybe this would be better, a better podcast, a better video if I did that, but don't have that. I'm not at that point yet. Not at that point yet. All right, we'll see what that schedule brings. Don't forget, tonight we'll be talking about Pitt, North Carolina. We'll talk about the schedule. We'll talk about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports on tonight's Panther-Lair show. That's live at 8:30 p.m. right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So tune in and we can have a fun conversation. All right, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle. We've got our post up on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board right now about submitting your questions from the mailbag. There were actually a couple questions that came in late last week, so we'll get to those, and then we will follow up with all the new questions in the mailbag episode of the Morning Pit on Friday. So make sure you submit some questions for that. All right, like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Hope you've had a good week so far. We'll catch up with you tonight on the live show at 8:30, and then again for tomorrow's Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.